My obsession with discordant tunes led me to many interesting places. Some of these locales are places that warrant a regular pilgrimage. I have a particular fondness for the home of the Black Minstrels, a dark place illuminated by bright neon flames. A land hidden away so that its residents can play their sacrosanct music away from prying eyes. Most in the soundscape don't know of its existence, and of the ones that do, most generally revile the place. You know, many consider these to be ugly tunes. You might not enjoy what you hear. But I suppose you won't know until you hear it, right? Well, that's your choice. You should know that what I say is considered a foul heresy. Many will despise the songs I sing. I'm one who revels in the occult and forbidden matters, so take my stories with a grain of salt. I suppose the story of the Black Minstrels starts where our last history lesson left off. As the Golden Note continued its puritanical march, one message was clear. March to the beat of the drum or slip into silence. Its influence blanketed the soundscape in a golden shroud, snuffing out the embers of whimpering souls. Like extinguished candles, one by one, the voices of the discordant choir fell violently silent. A silence which, when covered with an opulent veil, seemed more benign than it was in actuality. Apostate minstrels were crucified upon the now blood-soaked violins. A brutal evisceration of their music ensued. Their lyrics set ablaze, and their vocal cords ripped from their throats. All done upon elegant marble podiums for the world to see. It wasn't enough to just burn the witches, however, as the Golden Note turned their condescending gaze to adjacent souls. The evil could spread, the heretics' songs are contagious, they would chant. The brothers and sisters, the mothers and fathers, the friends and countrymen, none were spared. Every heretic's family was examined in excruciating detail. One discordant note found in their libraries of sheet music was enough. They would pay for their loved one's sin. How could it come to this, we wondered. And as we contemplated, we remembered all of the executions that came before. It started with the unskilled and the deviant. A subtle song that targeted the undesirables. The musicians that played tunes that mismatched the lyrics. Loathsome music played by vagabonds. We never saw this new violent song as savage, simply as the separation of the wheat from the chaff. These undesirables played their foul tunes in town squares, city streets, and urban parks. And when the Golden Note came to take them away, none of us were surprised. None of us want our music ripped away from our soul, but these sad artists brought it upon themselves, we would say, and quietly continue on with our day. Every day brought a new public execution. And with every deviant brought to a so-called justice, we saw their offenses wane in severity. It was subtle, and that's how we came to accept it. Piece by piece, the foundations of our free soundscape were eroded. There were some who noticed before the rest of us. They would defiantly compose their bitter songs, a siren's call and a dire warning to those who would hear. But they would be drowned out by the beautiful melody of the Golden Note. And now, today, most only hear the rusted notes of caked blood. Not all yielded their voice to the blaring drums, however. Some would hide away their instruments and mask their faces. These apostates knew this for what it was, a grand, silent masquerade. A game where if the Golden Note saw the face behind the melancholic voice, a life was lost. They dove deep into the soundscape, away from prying ears. You see, today, the soundscape is more vast than any ocean. Despite the far reaches of the Golden Note's grim fingers, there were depths to which even they could not reach. An abyssal place. Dark and cold, but safe. Here in the depths, the apostates found ancient ruins. Places sparsely populated and ornamented in eldritch ruins. A haven for this new generation of heretics, the Black Minstrels. It has been here that the refugees attempt to compose their black songs, hidden cabals and Gothic choirs. Here the excommunicated artisans forged new eldritch woodwinds. Otherworldly tones hummed through the stone walls, seeping into listeners' souls like ice creeping across a frigid lake. The new songs developed here twisted the very fabric of reality. A black minstrel could whistle a tune and twist and contort their bodies into beautiful and alien shapes. Phantasmic operas produced hallucinations and foul visions, opening the minstrels' minds to alternate realities. A place of freedom for those who paid the cost. These siren songs demanded a price. To perform them properly, one had to sing them first as silent songs, a practice that summoned music from below the bedrock of the practitioner's mind. Those who failed to respect the abyssal consequences of their silent songs were broken and shattered by the music running through them. But those minstrels who treated the dark arts they practiced with reverence were fused with the shadowy demons that were summoned from the obscura. It made them whole. As the black minstrels explored these sunken ruins, they unearthed vast libraries of ancient wisdom. It was in the archives of this lost world that the literature emerged which chronicled a number of lost arts. They fastidiously studied these texts and added their own melancholic compositions to the collection. And where the golden note stomped out any novel tune above, it was here, in the depths, that discordant tunes and aporetic songs flourished. These tunes talked of other magics, beyond the kinds that sprung from music. They described a sort of mysticism that flowed from blood, a sorcery that required the shedding of vitae from the caster. This school of magic required a price to be paid for every spell, and the results were irregular at the best of times. But the books addressed this irregularity. Blood magic seemed to be one of exploration and the release of control. Needless to say, this was one of the many esoteric topics of the library. In my first journeys to the Abyssal Depths, I was hesitant to walk through its alleyways. There was a profound feeling of despair that would seize your soul. These halls were populated by beaten and bruised people. Many of them fled from the Golden Note, but still hummed that roaring silence to themselves. Despite making it to a refuge, these sorry souls did not escape the hopeful whispers of that insidious song. Deep down, they still ached to walk the gilded highway. In many cases, this was the city where those wounded animals came to die. I think this is the primary reason why so many revile the place. We all aspire to help those whom we pity, and the streets were filled with these kinds of people, seemingly beyond hope. But I swallowed my pride and continued to watch them. To my surprise, the city streets were also filled with kindly benefactors. Hooded figures silently roamed the back alleys, and would extend a hand to those sorry souls suffering from the Golden Note's withdrawal. I never understood why so many of the vagrants slapped away the hands of those robed figures, but it became clear that there was more to the suffering I saw in the streets than I had initially guessed. On the odd occasion that I saw one of the impoverished accept the hand that was extended to them, I saw them get led away, even deeper into the depths of the ancient fortress. It was hard to follow them at first, and I lost many such couples in the labyrinth of passageways. But eventually I managed to tail a group to their destination. The vagrant was led to a large chamber, filled with many more robed figures. In the center was a chromatic lectern. a greasy stone pillar with a hue that resembled spilled oil. Dark colors radiated and shifted across its surface. Atop the lectern was a single, empty stone bowl. The vagrant was led to this bowl, and the robed figure held the vagrant's wrist over it. In short order, the vagrant produced a simple knife and ran it across their wrist, spilling their blood into the bowl. The vagrant winced at the pain, but did not withdraw their wrist. It seemed they knew more than myself about what was to come, and were there of their own accord. Once the bowl was filled, the robed figure tenderly bandaged the wound. And when they were done, they brought the bowl to the other attendants, one by one. Each in turn would dip a finger into the blood, and smear a vertical streak across their eyelids until every veiled face had crimson streaks running down their face. Over time, I came to witness many such rituals, and they ended in many ways. Some would culminate with the vagrant being forced back out the door into the cold, fear coloring their face in a way I would never forget. But many other ceremonies would end with the vagrant being given their own hooded robe, to join the collection of figures that had only moments ago cut deeply into their wrist. It was strange to me to watch these ordinances. They were conducted in silence. Not a single song was sung during the process. But after the ritual was done, the former vagrant seemed to be infused with new, otherworldly strength. At the time, I didn't understand what had happened, but it seemed obvious at this point that participation in the ritual was voluntary, and required the vagrant's blood as a price. I now understood why so many vagrants in the streets would slap away the hand that was extended to them. The pain in the ritual was obvious, and many had already fled from the pains incurred by the golden note. All of this with no guarantee of a favorable outcome. I believe now that the vagrants who rejected this ritual were unwilling to suffer any more than they already had. A soulful pain that I understood all too well. I suppose that to find new salvation, we must voluntarily accept the accompanying cost. Over time, I too participated in many such rituals. A story for another time. But this esoteric dynamic was one I had never witnessed before coming to the Abyss. I learned from these hooded figures. They shared those secrets with those who were willing to listen. I came to understand the ancient secrets the runes on the wall represented. I came to understand the power in blood. Juko, Ngoki Ra Ngomagko.